Nvidia GeForce Now is as exciting as it is poorly marketed. It's a game streaming service that's been stuck in beta purgatory for more than 2 years. In that time, Google launched its Stadia service, and Microsoft xCloud opened its own beta. Meanwhile, GeForce Now still hasn't claimed the mindshare or word of mouth. But GeForce Now might not need mindshare to win over its competitors. It's because it has a different tact. GeForce Now streams the PC games that you already own. Nvidia isn't running a game store here, unlike Google's Stadia service. Instead, GeForce Now connects to your existing digital game libraries to verify that you own the games that you want to play. And because the games are cloud-based, there's no updating or maintenance required. But that also means that only select games are supported. The service isn't really meant for tech enthusiasts or early adopters. Instead, it's explicitly aimed at people who own outdated PCs or Macs, but still want to play the hottest PC games. GeForce Now is an app for PCs, Mac, and Android phones that lets you stream many of the games that you already own on Steam or the Epic Game Store, Battle.net, or any other digital storefronts. It's effectively free, at least for an hour at a time. But a subscription will give you priority access to the servers, ray tracing in games that support it, and up to a 6-hour play session. The subscription currently costs $4.99 a month, but Nvidia hasn't settled on a long-term price. Setting up GeForce Now for the first time is a bit of a nightmare. When you log into the service, you're presented with a sort of junior varsity Steam client. There's a carousel of hot games, but it's mostly filled with old titles like Cuphead and Tropico 6. GeForce Now currently supports more than 400 titles, but there's no place where they're all listed. Instead, you can either scroll through a limited list of featured games or use the search bar to check for the game that you want to play. There's plenty of big-name games here like Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Metro Exodus, and of course The Witcher 3, but there's many glaring omissions too. Control, Red Dead Redemption 2, and Monster Hunter World, for example, are nowhere to be seen. Presumably, more games are being added all the time, and the library is already much more impressive than the paltry selection found on Google Stadia. But it's still disappointing when you're especially amped for a certain game, only to find it not available on the service. Performance on GeForce Now is entirely dependent on your internet connection. We tested multiple games in a variety of internet conditions and found that both input latency and image quality was massively impacted by both internet speed and connection stability, as well as the visual complexity of the game you're playing. Nvidia recommends a minimum of 15 Mbps for 60 frames per second at 720p or 30 Mbps for 1080p, and suggests connecting via Ethernet for the best experience possible. Here in the IGN office, with about a 50 meg download speeds over Wi-Fi, we experienced relatively minimal latency, but significant video artifacting on the incoming video stream, especially in video-demanding games like The Witcher 3 and Metro Exodus. Having said that, those quality issues could likely be attributed to our congested network all the same. In home testing, the distance between you and the router seemed to play a factor in how well things worked. Playing in a room fairly far from the router resulted in a relatively unstable stream quality, despite our speed test saying that the internet speed was more than sufficient. Latency was more noticeable, and the video quality often garbled into a smudgy cubist hellscape. That's the worst case scenario though. Playing over a stable connection, like over Ethernet or a fast Wi-Fi connection nearby to your router, is a totally different world. When we were playing in the same room as the router with a download speed of around 200 megs, we tested GeForce Now on desktop, MacBook, and on Shield TV. And in that ideal scenario, the stream quality held steady even in demanding games like Destiny 2. To amp things up, we simulated a congested network by streaming music over Sonos, watching YouTube TV, and downloading a video on another device. Even with all that network activity, Destiny 2 didn't falter in the slightest. Having said that, we're still really not convinced that streaming is ever going to provide the truly crispest graphical fidelity, and GeForce Now hasn't changed our minds. We've yet to be truly wowed by graphics, even with ray tracing in the equation. In the absolute ideal scenario that we tested, over Ethernet with a fiber internet connection, GeForce Now, it did work flawlessly. The Witcher 3 looked absolutely gorgeous at 1080p max settings, and latency was negligible enough that if I didn't know it was being streamed, I would have assumed it was running locally on a high-end PC. Even so, it didn't look quite as good as actually running locally on my high-end PC. While everyone's experience is bound to be different, we were really impressed with how well GeForce Now worked under moderately ideal conditions. There's something really special about playing a new PC game on a Mac that's almost a decade old. Unfortunately, that won't be the case across the board. For the majority of rural Americans with limited broadband infrastructure, the experience with game streaming services will be much more like our less successful test. Blocky, pixelated, and laggy. And that's unlikely to change for many years to come. Without a fast and stable connection, it's just not worth your time. And if you have a gaming PC, you're within your rights to be incredulous. After all, what's the difference between being stuck in the room with the fastest internet and the room with your gaming rig? But for that small contingency of gamers who, 1, don't own a gaming PC, 2, want to play the best PC games, and 3, have blazing fast internet, GeForce Now seems like a winner. And if you're not sure if game streaming will work for you, GeForce Now is the perfect option. You don't have to pay a cent to get started. For more from the front lines of the brand new game streaming battlegrounds, keep it to IGN.
Next Gen Console Watch 2020 is IGN's weekly show reporting on all the latest PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll bring on experts to discuss and analyze all the latest developments of what's coming to the new generation of consoles. Join us weekly on Fridays at 6 a.m. Pacific.